Syria is what I like to call the modern day powder keg. When you look at the events preceding World War I and World War II, there were a set of circumstances that historians have come to dub as powder kegs. And right now, I believe we are in the midst of one of those circumstantial situations. And it's only a matter of time before this breaks out into full-scale war between the East and the West, between Russia, Iran, and the United States, the UK, some members of the EU, etc. It's about power, it's about resources, and there's atrocities on both sides. Now, all that being said, in my lifetime, I've never seen the tension ever come to such a head. This here article out of New York Post, and it's being widely reported, breaking today. Putin and the Russian government have called Russians back to the motherland. Russian officials and others back to Russia. There was an old saying during the Cold War, and it went a little like this. When you see your Russian neighbors start to pack and leave the United States, well, get ready for World War III. And that was during the Cold War, and I think tensions right now are living up to that same atmosphere in many ways. Russian President Vladimir Putin could be prepping for global war in wake of deteriorating relations with the United States and other Western countries, according to an incendiary new report. Putin sent out an order to top Russian officials, politicians, and their children across the world demanding that they return to the motherland. Let me just repeat that. Putin has sent out an order to top Russian officials and politicians and their children across the world, demanding that they return to Russia. Immediately, suddenly. The order comes amid rising tensions with the U.S. over Syria and Putin's last-minute cancellation of a planned trip to Paris to meet with French President Francois Hollande, who, by the way, came out and accused Putin and Russia of war crimes recently as well, a few days ago. This is all part of the package of measures to prepare elites to some big war. Russian political analyst Stanislav Belkovsky told the Daily Star. Retired Russian Lieutenant General Evgeny Buzinsky told the BBC Russia that U.S. interests would suffer if the situation escalates. If you want a confrontation, you will get one. But it won't be a confrontation that doesn't harm the interests of the United States. You want a confrontation, you'll get one everywhere. Worth noting as well, on the other side of the aisle, the RAF, there in the UK, just cleared fire on Russians. Tornado warplanes can launch missiles if threatened. RAF fighter jets will be armed with air-to-air missiles and have been given the green light to shoot down hostile Russian planes. British and NATO pilots have been told to take the drastic action if they are fired on by Vladimir Putin's Air Force during missions over Iraq. The move comes after British ministers warned Russia had made the situation in the Middle East much more dangerous. Senior defense sources say it is just a matter of time before our fighters are involved in a deadly confrontation with Russian jets. One source said, "We need to protect our pilots, but at the same time, we're taking a step closer to war. It will only take one plane to be shot down in an air-to-air battle, and the whole landscape will change." Exactly. And that's what I would call the proverbial ignition spark to this powder keg. Potentially. The RAF Tornado jets will be equipped with the advanced short-range air-to-air missile, a supersonic weapon which can blast any aircraft out of the sky. Oh, man. It's really not looking good. I've never seen it this bad. Ever. It hasn't been like this since the Cold War. And Gorbachev warned of a, quote, dangerous point as U.S.-Russia ties sour. This is following a massive nuclear war training exercise with 40 million people. 40 million people. 40 million. In case you're wondering how many people live in Russia. Oh my goodness. 40 million people? That's almost a third of the population of Russia. Okay? Engaging in a massive nuclear exercise. Lasting 3 days, the exercise being run by the Ministry for Civil Defense, Emergencies, and Elimination of Consequences of Natural Disasters, EMERCOM, will involve 200,000 emergency personnel and cooperation of 40 million civilians. All right, 200,000 emergency personnel and 40 million civilians. I mean, when's the last time the United States ever did a drill like this? I don't even know. I would have to look that up, but it isn't in my lifetime. No way. Not in the past 30 years. Not since the Cold War, at least. Probably before that. I don't really know. But that's massive. There's absolutely no doubt about it. That is massive. The drill will rehearse radiation, chemical, and biological protection of the personnel and population during emergencies at crucial and potentially dangerous facilities. Fire safety, civil defense, and human protection at social institutions and public buildings are also planned to be checked. Response units will deploy radiation, chemical, and biological monitoring centers and sanitation posts at the emergency areas, while laboratory control networks are going to be put on standby. They really do believe that they're going to be involved in a nuclear war over there in Russia. Okay, their officials, their government really thinks this is going to happen, or at least thinks there's a good chance this is going to happen. Oh my goodness. Now, why is that? If you haven't been paying attention, there's been a lot of really bad stuff happening in Syria. Really bad stuff. And this has been going on for 5 years. It's killed 250,000 people. It's just really bad. But it's gotten even worse the past month. Now, the United States and Russia tried to engage in talks for a ceasefire over there because, of course, the United States, they're arming the rebels, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, quote-unquote moderate rebels. Yeah, stupidest thing ever. And Russia is backing the government of Syria, led by Bashar al-Assad, and it's essentially a civil war with the United States backing the rebels and, Russia and the Syrian government trying to tame the rebels. And they tried to talk peace talks and implement this ceasefire, and it deteriorated within days. Okay, and it all started when the United States carried out a massive airstrike on Assad's troops, the Russian-backed troops, the Syrian government troops. Killed 62 Syrian soldiers. And the U.S. came out and said, "Oh, it appears to have been an intelligence failure." And Russia came back and said, "No, you're bullshitting us. No way. This was done on purpose. It just so happens to benefit the rebels, the people you're backing." Come on. It's pretty obvious. Of course, part of this ceasefire deal entailed UN convoys aiding injured civilians and even injured fighters during the ceasefire. And what happened? it's horrible. What happened was they were bombed and attacked multiple times, and nobody really knows who did it. Russia's blaming the U.S.-backed rebels, and the United States are blaming Russia and Syria. I mean, so that's what we got going on, and that's why the ceasefire ended. The U.S. bombing Syrian troops and UN convoys being attacked by God knows who. If I had to guess, probably the U.S.-backed rebels, because they're just vicious and they don't care. That's the only conclusion I can come to, and it's just getting. It really is. It's really bad. Russian state newspapers predict, quote, direct military conflict with U.S. as it compares Syria stalemate to Cuban Missile Crisis. Third World War fears have been voiced by the newspapers over the growing tensions with the USA. This is the worst I've seen it in my life. The tensions with the US and Russia are the worst I've seen it in my life. I'm not just saying that. This is bad. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is because Russia's coming out and they're like screaming from the rooftops. This is horrible, that we're about to be in a nuclear war if something doesn't get solved, because the tensions are through the roof. They're telling their civilians, their population, to prepare for nuclear war on TV. Like, what? I mean, what am I supposed to think? I'm not trying to fearmonger here, but that's what's going on. Russia tells citizens nuclear war with West could happen soon. Russian generals coming out saying tensions have never been this bad. Russia will take down any American airplane or rocket targeting Syrian army. So this is Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson General Igor Konashenkov. And those of you who are naive enough to think that the United States is bombing ISIS in Syria, and that's what any intervention in the Middle East is about, trying to kill the terrorists. No, you're wrong. It's the opposite. I proved that in this video. I'll leave links. The real reason why Turkey shot down the Russian fighter jet, what you're not being told, and I go into all of this, that, Russia's the only one bombing the Islamic extremists. The U.S. is aiding and arming the Islamic extremists. This is very, very well-known knowledge among anybody who knows really what's going on. Even in the mainstream, this is not a secret. It's confirmed. They're not moderate rebels. There's no such thing as vicious Muslim extremist people who hate America that are just moderates, okay? The CIA is posing as Islamic extremists with a lot of money, and they're working with Saudi Arabia, and they're just giving these moderate rebels, quote unquote, all of this money and all of these arms. Most of it all most of them are young, Muslims who hate the West, who hate anything that represents a Western secular government. And yes, Assad is secular, for those of you that don't know, very secular. And really what this all comes down to is a multi-dimensional, full-spectrum analysis of a global powder keg that just needs a spark to send the world into a multi-regional war. And it's not just Syria. Syria is just the middle of it, the most tense part of it as well. So let's just hope that peace will reign for the most part. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I'll leave links to everything I talked about in this video. All sourced, all confirmed. It's been press. Keep your head up, stay real, and no fear.